Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second webinar in our Sharing Data Made Easy series. I'm very pleased to be hosting this webinar with our partners at roundCorner and happy to have you all joining us today to learn more about eReporting and sharing your information with Foundation Center. So my name is Laia Greeno, and I'm Director of Data Discovery at the Foundation Center. And in that capacity, I oversee our eReporting program, which I'll be telling you about in just a moment. For those not familiar with Foundation Center, we're a nonprofit organization that since the 1950s has been making data about philanthropy available for use by the social sector and for others. And though historically we've focused on collecting data about US philanthropy, we're increasingly gathering information about philanthropy around the world. So joining me today is Julia Cannon, who is Senior Product Manager with foundationConnect. And in terms of our agenda for this morning, for those joining from the West Coast, or this afternoon for those of you on the East Coast, I'll just start with a quick overview about eReporting. And then Julia will do a quick demo so you can see how eReporting works in foundationConnect. And then we'll have plenty of time for your questions and answers at the end. Although if you've joined this webinar today with specific questions in mind, feel free to submit them now, or if you think of questions throughout the webinar, feel free to put them in the question box at any time. And I did want to mention from the get-go that we'll make a recording of this webinar available as well as the slides. So before we get started and I tell you about eReporting, we did want to get a better sense of the audience, and so have a couple of poll questions for you all. And this is the first time I use this function in GoToWebinar, so bear with me. So the first question is, are you currently using foundationConnect? And I'll just give you all a moment to answer that question. Okay. Hopefully all of you have had a chance to answer. Good, one more second. Okay, so it looks like about 80% of you said yes and 20% said no. The second question that we wanted to ask is whether your organization is currently eReporting. You have three options here: yes, no, and I don't know. And for those of you who answer I don't know, feel free to email us at egrants@foundationcenter.org, and we can follow up with you to let you know who our contact might be, or if you are sharing information with us. Again, I'll just give you all a moment to answer here. Okay. So of those who answered, about a quarter of you said yes, 64% said no. So this is great. We're happy to share information about eReporting with you all today. And 14% said no. All right. So what is eReporting? Basically, eReporting is just a way for you to share your grants data with Foundation Center directly, typically through a spreadsheet. And this program exists for two reasons. One is to improve the timeliness of the data we have about Foundation's grant making, and the second is to improve the quality of the data that we have. So in terms of timeliness, most of Foundation Center's data comes from the 990, but as you all know, this data is quite old. By the time you file your 990 and the IRS has a chance to process it and then post it, more than a year may have gone by, meaning that the sector is really relying on outdated information for its decision making. And in terms of quality, the 990 is also more of a compliance document than a communications tool. And so the level of detail provided is not usually very good. So for example, while we might know that a grant was made for health, it would be much more helpful to other funders to know that it was meant to improve tuberculosis control in China, for example. So those are the two things that the eReporting program is really focused on solving. As for what information, just to backtrack, in terms of the how, there's just 4 easy steps. You export your data from your grants management software. You review your data to make sure you're comfortable with how it's appearing, and to make sure that no sensitive information has gone out. And then you submit it to egrants@foundationcenter.org. And you could repeat this process as often as you'd like. You can report monthly, quarterly. We just ask that you report your data at least annually. So again, as for what information you are required to share, there's just 8 required fields. And as you can see, half of them have to do with the recipient, another 3 with the timing and the amount of funded provided, and the last is a grant description. And in a bit, I'll explain why a good grant description is so important. So while you can submit data to us with just those required fields, you do have the option of providing additional information, and that can help you exert more control over how your data appears in our products. So I've grouped these additional fields into 3 categories. The first one is fields that help us ensure that we're talking about the right grant or the right recipient, given the differences in how funders may capture the recipient's name, for example. So here we have like your transaction or grant ID, an exact address, and then any identifier for that recipient. You can also share additional grant details like the grant title, the grant program area, the duration, or the grant start and end dates, and then we'll calculate the duration for you. And then if you're a community foundation, we also recommend providing the fund name or the fund type or subtype. Then there's a final category of additional fields that have to do with coding your grant properly. So once we receive your information, we code it according to our taxonomy, which is called the Philanthropy Classification System, or PCS for short, which covers these 5 facets: subject, geographic area served, population served, support strategies, and transaction type. If you don't provide coding that gets at these things, and I should mention that this can be your own coding. You don't necessarily need to use our taxonomy if you have your own. But if no coding is provided within the data that you send to us, we'll basically try to extract this information from the grant description or other information you provide, such as what we know about the recipient being funded. Here you can see what the grant information would look like in our products, and in this case, this is how a grant would appear in Foundation Maps. And this example is from the Bar Foundation, which I should mention does provide some coding, but I wanted to illustrate, again, going back to the importance of a good grant description. As you can see here, the Bar Foundation has provided information that would let us extract information that this is a general support grant, that it's about out-of-school learning, and just given the nature of the activity, that the population served would be children and youth. So like I said, you only need to provide the required fields, the 8 required fields to submit your data as part of the eReporting program. And that could be a good place for you to start. But if you'd like to exert more control over, how these details appear in our products, then you can also supplement that with the additional fields I shared. So all that said, why eReport? There's 4 reasons to consider eReporting. The first is that you know your grant making best. So by eReporting, you're helping us tell the story of your grant making in the most accurate and best way possible. Otherwise, we're having to extract this meaning from the data that we can find in the 990. Second, by eReporting, you're also helping ensure that the field has the best data possible on which to base its decisions, whether in terms of finding other funders to collaborate with or making decisions about what or where to fund. You also get a free communications tool in the form of an interactive eReporter map, which displays the data you've shared with us. And that's the third reason. And I'll show a few screenshots of that in a second. But then the last reason that we believe eReporting can be beneficial to you is that you can save yourself some time. So as I'll also share in a bit, the data that you share with us makes it to many different knowledge products that are meant to benefit the sector. And so by sharing the data with us, you can help minimize the request for information you receive. So you're sharing the data once for multiple purposes, in essence. So here's the screenshots of the interactive map you get as a result of sharing your data with us. This first screenshot shows the distribution of grants by recipient location. And if you selected a country here in the location box, or if you zoomed in, then you would see the distribution of grants at a lower level, like the state or even down to the actual address. The second screenshot shows the distribution of grants by geographic area served. And obviously the darker shading indicates a higher level of funding. And in addition to the map, you can also view this information in a list view. So here you could easily see who your top recipients are by the dollar value of grants. And you can also, in this grants tab, you would see a listing of all the grants that you've provided. We also want to make sure that people know what's happening with the data that they share with Foundation Center. So where exactly does your data go? In addition to the free eReporter map that I showed you, the data also appears in our two main subscription products, Foundation Directory Online and Foundation Maps. And I should mention that these products are also freely available to the public at more than 400 Foundation Center partner locations, both in the United States and several other countries. Your data also appears in other Foundation Center knowledge products, such as these Foundation Landscapes, which focus on different subject issues. In some cases, they focus on a particular geographic location. And in essence, these different products are slices of our database packaged to present only the data that's relevant to a particular community. And these, in the vast majority of cases, are public as well. So that's a bit about the what and why of eReporting. And now I'm going to turn it over to Julia so she can share a bit about the how this actually works in foundationConnect. So Julia, over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm just getting my PowerPoint up really quickly. Hi, everyone. My name is Julia Cannon. I'm the Senior Product Manager for foundationConnect. And we're going to start, since some of you are new to foundationConnect or not current users, I'm just going to start with a quick introduction of who we are at foundationConnect and at roundCorner. foundationConnect is a product of roundCorner, and roundCorner has products that serve foundations as well as nonprofits and institutions of higher education. All of our products run on the Salesforce platform. So if you are new to the Salesforce platform, just so you know, it's an extremely flexible constituent relationship management system. And everything you're going to see today, you'll see within that Salesforce and foundationConnect environment. I also want to talk a little bit about why we're partnering with Foundation Center. Our mission at roundCorner is to change the way people change the world. And we believe that by sharing information, you can learn from each other and accelerate that rate of change. We got that idea from you guys, from our customers. And so that's why we're partnering with Foundation Center. It's so those who are already sharing data will be able to continue to share it, and those who aren't will have the option to begin sharing if that's what makes sense for your mission. So with that, let's go to the demo. If you aren't eReporting, I hope to show you today how easy it is to eReport in foundationConnect. And if you are eReporting, then I hope that today you will learn something new about eReporting, or perhaps how to add some additional automations to the process and make it a little easier for you. Today we're going to be looking at a fictional foundation system. This data that we're looking at is not live, this is not a real foundation, and all contacts within it are merely figments of my imagination. So, depending on various factors like what version of the product you're currently on, what version you started with, whether or not you started from a trial, you may or may not have a report type for eReporting already in your system. So the first thing we're going to do is look at how to check for that. And then if you don't have it, I'll show you really quickly how to set it up. It's really quite easy. So here I am on my home screen, and I am going to head over to the setup area. And I am going to look for report types. Right here. And as you can see, I've got a few that I've made, but I do not have anything specifically for eReporting. So if you're in that situation, that's okay. We're going to go through this setup process, and it's a one-time setup process. So once you go through this the first time, you will never have to do it again, and the eReporting process will be very quick and easy. But in case you're starting from scratch like me, let's go to New Custom Report Type. And you're going to select your primary object, and it's going to be accounts. These are your organizations, the nonprofits that you're granting to. We'll add a report type label. Let's say eReporting, make it nice and easy so that other users in the system will know exactly what's going on. Also, I can add a description. I can say that this is a report for eReporting. To Foundation Center. I'm going to leave all the typos for the sake of time, and then we'll choose a category to store it in. This is where I'll find my report once it's been created. I'll stick it under Accounts and Contacts. Let's deploy it so that it's available for me when I go to create my report, and I'll click Next. So now I have my accounts, which I selected as my primary object. I only need to add one more, so I will click on that box. And I will choose opportunities or the requests. These are the grant applications that are coming in. In this case, we need to make sure that it stays on the default. Each A must have at least one B record, and save. And now I have my report type already set up. Another thing I'm going to want to do before I leave this area, just because it's going to make things a little bit easier in the next step, is I'm going to edit the layout. And when I do that, I'm going to see the list of fields that are available to my report type that I've just created. And I can also select from here any fields that I want to make available by default. So this would be a good place to look at some of those required fields that Laia talked about earlier and add them in just to make it easy. So let's add the state. So if I double click on this, then I can check this, which means that it will, by default, be included in my report, saves me a little bit of dragging and dropping later on. I also have the option here of changing the label. So if you go to the Foundation Center's webpage, they provide a template on eReporting. If you want to match up your labels so that they match Foundation Center's labels, you can do that. So in this example, let's go ahead and we'll call it the, instead of billing state and province, this is now the recipient state and province. And when I do this, it's going to change the label for the way it appears in the report. It's not changing the label of this field anywhere else in the system. On the pages where I'm used to seeing billing state province, it's going to continue to say that. But for this particular report, I can go ahead and update the labels by making this change. So I will click OK. And that will make it appear that way in the report. Additionally, I can add fields that maybe aren't showing up here already. So for example, let's say we want to share information about a fiscal sponsor, and we're setting up our fiscal sponsors in our system so that they are parent accounts of the organization we are granting to. I can very easily add that in here by clicking Add Fields Related via Lookup. I will go to the parent account, and I will simply add the account name. And that's going to add in the name of that fiscal sponsor. And once again, I'll just click in there. I'll make sure that it's checked by default. And let's update the name so that when I open that report, I know what I'm looking at. Here I have all of my fields for the accounts or the organization record, and then down here I have all of the fields for the grants or the opportunities. So again, I can double click or I can add fields as needed in here. Once I'm done setting all of that up, I will click Save. And now I have my report type all set up. So again, this was the one-time setup that you need to do. Now that I've done this, I will never have to come back to this area again, unless I want to make some minor tweaks or change some of those field labels. So now the next thing I'll do is I will actually create the report. So I click on my Reports tab. Next thing I do is select New Report. And then if you recall, when I set up the report type, I indicated where I would find that. I put it under organizations and contacts. So you see I have my eReporting here. I also could have just typed it in the quick find box to find it. And I will create. Now I have my unsaved report. You see I have my recipient state and province because I renamed it and selected it as default. My fiscal sponsor, again, you saw me set that up, so now that's showing up by default. All the other fields that I want to add are over here, and again, if I select them by default in the report type, then they'll show up here automatically. I don't have to drag and drop, but now I can. So let's put the city in there. And then I'll just set up all of the filters that I want to include in here. Make sure that you're both including everything you want and excluding everything you want. So one good example might be making sure that the time ranges make sense. So I'm going to select all time so that we've got some good data to look at, because again, this is just a fictional system, a fictional foundation system. You may want to add filters like a status on the request to only fill in the awarded grants. Or you may have a custom field where you have a checkbox that excludes a grant from what you want to share with Foundation Center, because it's not something that you want to share for this purpose. And that case, you'd want to add that filter as well. So let's add our status field as a filter, and that way we're only looking at awarded applications. Once I have all of this set up and it looks the way I want it to, I'm going to save this report. Let's give it, we'll call it eReporting as well, make it nice and easy. I'm going to put it in a public folder so that other people at my organization can access this as well. And then I'm going to save and run the report. Now that I have this report saved, it's available every time I or one of my coworkers comes in to pull this up. So again, this is part of that one-time setup process. So now that I've created the report type and I've saved this report, eReporting is going to be a breeze. From here on out, every time I want to eReport, all I have to do is come to the Reports tab, open up this report. I'll review it really quickly, make sure it looks like what I want, includes what I want, doesn't include what I wanted to exclude. And then I will simply export details. When I click on that, we're going to leave it in an Excel format. That's how it's preferred. And all I have to do is export. As you can see, it's downloading directly in my browser. And as soon as it's done, I will open it up. And then for those of you who are familiar with exporting Salesforce reports, you know that there's this footer at the bottom that we always have to get rid of. And now I simply save this, attach it to an email, and email it to egrants@foundationcenter.org. I believe that's right, but Leah, please correct me if I'm wrong. And that's all documented with the Foundation Center's documentation. So that's all there is to eReporting. I will simply, again, come to this report, export it, save it, and then send it. There is one step I can do though within the system that will add just a little bit of automation for me. If I don't want to have to remember to come in every time and run this report and send it out, I have the option of scheduling this report to run at a certain time. So if I open up the report, the eReporting report, and I come to run report, I have this option to schedule future runs. When I click on that, I can set up a schedule for the report to be emailed to me directly from the system automatically. Again, I don't have to remember to come into the system to run the report and to go through these steps. My reminder is the email that shows up in my inbox. And at that point, I can simply review the file and then forward on to Foundation Center. So when I click on schedule report, I can email the report either just to myself, or I can report it, or I can email it to myself and other coworkers. If I want someone else to take a look at it as well, I can include them in this process. And then I can schedule it for the frequency, a start date and end date, and then the preferred time of day that I want it to be emailed to me. And then once I'm done, I would simply save that report schedule, and then it will email to me automatically. So again, that saves a couple of steps because I don't have to remember to come in. I don't have to set my own reminder. The reminder is the email, which I can then simply forward.
Great.
So that's eReporting.
Thanks
in
very
foundationConnect, absolutely. I just want to say that if any of you want to set this up and you run into any snags in doing so, we do have documentation in our knowledge articles on our customer portal that you guys can access. Additionally, if you get stuck, you can open a support case with our support team, and they would be more than happy to help you out. All right, Laia, back to you.
Great. And actually, Julia, since we're still on your screen, just one more question about these automated reports. So I know one issue that we face sometimes in terms of getting data from organizations that share more frequently than on an annual basis is that sometimes we end up getting a cumulative list of grants, which means then we need to sort out what data has been previously submitted so we're not creating duplicate records. And so when you create this recurring report, is there a way to just limit the specific time period of data that's being provided to us?
Yeah, great question. And the answer is yes, absolutely. So the way you would do that is when you set up your frequency, when you're scheduling your report, you'll want to make sure that your time frame, the date ranges that you set in the report that you've saved, matches that frequency. So if you're emailing this every month, make sure that your time frame is only showing the current month's grants. And then, of course, because this is Salesforce reporting, you can make those dates based on the award date. You can make it based on the create date, whatever makes the most sense for you all in your reporting. But you can absolutely set it up that way so that Foundation Center isn't getting an increasingly longer list of awarded grants each time you e-report to them.
Perfect. So I am just going to grab the presenter control back just to share this final, did not mean to click on that. This final slide, which just shows additional resources where you can find information about e-reporting. So this is our basic e-reporting page where you can find information about what e-reporting entails, but also find our template. If you are interested in using our taxonomy for things like subject or population served, you can find it here at taxonomy.foundationcenter.org. Although, like I said, it's also very helpful if you just want to provide any internal taxonomy that you use. We also have instructions for e-reporting with foundationConnect specifically up on the site, and we'll be adding the webinar recording here as well. And then finally, if you want to see examples of where your data might show up, like the landscapes that I mentioned, you can find those here. And if you have questions at any time about eReporting, you can contact us at egrants@foundationcenter.org. It's a generic address, but gets checked by several of us on a more than once on a daily basis. So that is all the information we wanted to share with you all. I just want to check if there's any questions from the audience about either how eReporting works or the benefits or anything else that you might have in mind. And while you all think about that, I will just mention, so sometimes one question that has come up is, if we're getting data from the 990, like I said, that is the main source of information that Foundation Center has. Does that mean that if you all send us your information via eReporting, that we'll have your information twice in our products? And the answer to that is no. We have a system that we call survivorship, where any data that we get from foundations directly, which we consider higher quality data, would take precedence over anything we get from the 990. So you don't need to worry about having grants show up more than once. And it looks like we have a question. So the question is, how often do you prefer to get the data? Monthly, yearly? Again, because one of the main, and that's a great question, because the main goal of the eReporting program, or one of the main goals, is to increase the timeliness of the data for the sector. If we do think it's ideal to report on a, say, quarterly basis or monthly basis, if that's possible for you. I should say that some eReporters have mentioned that this actually makes the task of eReporting easier for them, because it's less data to review before you send it on to us. But again, we encourage you to start with whatever you're comfortable doing. So if annual is all you can manage to start, given other responsibilities, that's totally fine. If you could do monthly or quarterly, that's great also. So thanks for the question, Danielle. The second question is from Joyce. I'd like to discuss this with our team. Will you provide the slides from today's meeting? Absolutely. You'll get a follow-up email tomorrow with a recording of the slides, a recording of the webinar, and then we will also post the slides on the website here on this page, so you have easy access to it. And like I said, if there's any other additional information that we can provide to make that conversation go easier with your team, just email us at egrants, and we'd be happy to provide that. Any other questions? Well, if not, Julia, any last words that you'd like to share before we close out?
I just want to thank everybody for being here. And for those of you who are not currently eReporting, if you embark on that journey, good luck. And again, reach out if you need any support.
Great. Well, I'll echo Julia's thanks. Thank you for joining us to learn about this. We think good quality, timely data is critical to making philanthropy more efficient and effective. So are glad that so many of you joined today to learn more about it. All right. Bye, everyone.